Gun Rights Radio Network has the best pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun rights podcast available on the net. The podcasts are absolutely free when subscribing using iTunes or Zune Marketplace. Or if you want, you can just listen from the website. Make sure you visit gunrightsradio.com to subscribe. Podcasting freedom, one episode at a time.
Okay, so step 5 is you're driving the sights into the target. So it's this motion right here. You bring the gun up, the sights come into the target, your fingers onto the trigger, sights are on, and then you break the shot. Now, step 1 through 3 for pretty much everybody is pretty easy. Just getting to the gun, draw, and bring it out. It's step 4 and step 5 that we usually see problems happening in the draw. The two poor draw techniques that you're going to see is what we call the porpoise draw, where the gun comes down, goes up, down, back up, and into the target. That's a complete waste of time. The other draw that we see is what's called a bowling draw, where the gun comes up and like this, and you bring it up into the target. That's also poor. What you want to do is kind of bring the gun up. The whole entire trowel is at a diagonal. So you bring the gun up to the target, sights come up, and what happens here is that I'm looking at the target, and the front sight starts coming into my view. And at that point, I'm able to see the target driving it into, see the front sight driving it into the target. So because of the fact that steps 4 and 5 are probably the most difficult for most people, what I like to show is from step 5, just bring it back to 4. So have the shooter just work on 5 to 4 over and over. So you can kind of see the rocking motion as the gun comes up into the target and you start grooving that movement in. Then you bring it back to step 3. So from 4 to 3 is hands come together. So you're going 3, 4, 5, hands come together, 3, 4, 5, right out to the target, and keep doing this over and over. Just driving that whole entire sequence home. So what you're doing here is basically pinch roll into the target, gun comes up, drive the sights into the target. After you get comfortable with that, you want to basically take it all the way back to step 1 and do it all together as one complete fluid motion with no wasted movement or anything. But again, the thing here is to keep it smooth and keep it slow. Don't try to go too fast too early. Speed will come later on. So the draw looks like this. And you want to just practice this over and over and over until it becomes literally almost mechanical. Now the other thing that I do is to find a good index onto the gun or an index in my start position. We have 2 basic start positions, hands relaxed at sides and then wrists above shoulders. So hands relaxed at sides, what I typically do is take and rest the forearm of my strong arm against the grip of the gun. And it always indexes the same place. That way my mind pretty much knows what the movement is of the gun because I've done it so many times. The other start position is wrists above shoulders. The requirement there is that your wrists have to be above your shoulders. Now, there's wrists above shoulders, and then there's wrists above shoulders. There's no point of being way up here because that's just more time to get down to the gun. So you have to meet basically the minimum requirement is that your wrists are above your shoulders. I like to index myself with my hands, fingers on the bill of my cap. You can do it on your earmuffs or whatever, but basically the idea is that you index it somewhere and you do that same thing over and over. So I'll index here for my wrists above shoulders and come down. Again, it's the same movement as hands at sides. The weak hand goes to the center position, the strong hand goes to the gun. I'm going to talk about the concealed carry draw, which is one that we use in IDPA. Because the courses of fire generally require a concealment garment, there's a couple little differences in the technique. Depending on what you're wearing as your garment, I'm using the ubiquitous fisherman's vest. It was popular for a while to stitch stiffeners and various things into the vest to help with the draw. Now, about the best you can do is put something with a little bit of weight in the front pocket. Loaded magazine, for instance, your car keys, just put it into the front pocket to give you a little weight here, because generally what the concealed draw is going to involve sweeping the garment away on the strong side. And if you've got some extra weight in there, that weight will help carry the vest around and out of the way while the gun is coming clear of the holster. Also in IDPA, we've got the same general start positions
Most of the time you'll see hands relaxed at sides or wrists above shoulders. When I'm doing the hands relaxed at sides, because the gun is being covered by the vest, I generally am not trying to depend on some kind of an index on the gun. I'll usually just put my thumb on my pants seam, so it's on the body center line, which is where I'm going to find the gun after I swept the vest away. So I like to, as my weak hand is coming up to my body center line, the strong hand is coming up to the vest about here, and I curl the fingers in, and then as I slide my hand down the vest, at the same time I'm sweeping it away, so that by the time the gun is uncovered, my hand is about at the gun level. Others suggest not depending on that sweeping motion to swing the vest out of the way, but to keep your hand hard against your body and keep it there as you rake the vest back, that the vest won't get between your hand and your gun as long as you keep your hand firmly against your chest. You can do it either way. I've just been practicing and doing the sweep draw for long enough that that's the way I prefer to do it. So if you're starting with your hands at sides, again, I keep the thumb on the body center line just by kind of thumbing the pants seam on my pants, sweep the vest away, and then the rest of it is just as Steve explained it. Since I've got my hand right at the gun, I generally come in from the side, get the good firing grip, straight out of the holster, rotate it down range, click or bang as the case may be. So again, one more, just hands at sides, sweep the vest away, straight down range. Now from the hands elevated, it's just a little bit different, but again, it's just from here to here. You're just coming down to the same point instead of coming up to that point. So just hands come down, sweep the vest away, and draw.
Okay, so we're briefly going to talk about the 4 rules of gun safety. These rules apply to everything in IFSIC. It's what keeps the sport safe. So the 4 rules are: treat the gun as if it's loaded always. That's very critical, and everything that we do here is always treating the guns as if they're loaded. The second rule is never point the gun at anything you're not willing to destroy. If you combine the first rule with the second rule, it pretty much eliminates any accidents that will and can possibly happen. The next rule is keep your finger off the trigger guard or out of the trigger until your sights are on target. And the last rule is always be aware of your target and the backstop and what's behind it. Okay, so that's it for grip and draw. One thing is that you really want to emphasize or repeat this in terms of dry fire. So find a good safe place in your home. Make sure your gun is unloaded. Triple check and make sure it's unloaded, and then just repeat this over and over and over in dry fire, because dry fire is really where you groove this process into your mind. There's no such thing as muscle memory, but you can do repetitive ingraining programming in your mind to really learn this stuff. And after a while, it really just becomes second nature. So it's really important that you do this. And the other benefit of dry fire is you're not being disturbed by the recoil of the gun or the bang distracting your mind, so it can really focus in on what you're trying to teach it.
I think also it's valuable to use a target for your draw and grip practice, because it's sort of like in the idea of following through on your shots. The draw isn't an end to itself. It's just preparatory to the shot. So I like, whenever I'm doing draw practice, to draw to a target, get a good sight picture and a good snap. You want to make sure that you're working towards that final ultimate step of getting a good shot off. So don't just do this kind of draw motion over and over again. Get the gun up and get a good sight picture, click, and then that'll improve both your draw stroke, then also that ability to acquire the sights and break a shot quickly as a result of the good draw.
And that's a good point, because like I was mentioning during the draw, the last step is step 5, where you're driving the sight into the target. So you want to have a target you're driving the sight into it. You want to have a target set up there where you can see the A zone, focus on the A zone, and then drive the sight into that A zone onto the target.
That's about it for this episode.
Okay, so you can visit our website at powerfactorshow.com, or you can send us an email, or if you have any questions or comments or something you want to see, send us an email at powerfactorshow@gmail.com. See you next time.